Hello.
Hello.
Hello. What's your name?
I'm Sarah.
Oh, hello, Sarah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm from Braintree and I get David's newsletter.
Oh, excellent. Yes.
And I thought tonight would be a very interesting discussion
Yes.
to learn more, really.
Yes, especially with the current pandemic. There's been so many deaths, hasn't there? So, it's the current topic at the moment, death and bereavement, isn't it?
Well, it is to an extent. It's been very, very difficult for all of us.
Good evening, Sidra. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine, thank you. And you?
I'm well, thank you.
What religion are you, Sarah?
My path is pagan, so I'm Wiccan.
Oh.
Hello, everybody.
Oh, lovely. Hello.
Hello.
Linda.
Evening, Linda.
It's nice to see Linda.
Yeah, I'm Christian, if that's any help.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sean Finlay, and I'm up in Wisbeach in the Fens.
Oh, lovely to meet you.
Just joining you this evening. I was very attracted by the lovely poster and wish you well with your endeavours.
Thank you. Hello, Natalie. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Lee. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Chrissy. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello, Judith.
People
Hello,
here
everybody.
from all over. We've got somebody here from Braintree and...
I'm from Colchester.
Welcome, Sam. Thank you to everybody and welcome. Good evening. And my name is Tariq Mahmood. I'm the Vice Chair of Havering Interfaith Forum. We've covered many topics before, from birth to marriage. And today we're moving on to rituals and rites about faith and death and how different faiths view death and opinions surrounding that. And in the light of the recent pandemic and increasing numbers of deaths, our topic today is very relevant. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first speaker, Rabbi Lee Sunderland, and he's from the Havering and Romford District Synagogue. So a very warm welcome to our Rabbi Lee Sunderland to make a start on this evening. And may I also suggest at any duration of talk, up to 15 minutes or so, so that we take about an hour to finish the 4 speakers' presentations, and then we'll have question and answer session at the end. So I'll leave it to you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Tariq. Good evening, everybody. First of all,
Good evening.
I need to, as they would do in Parliament, I have to express an interest. I also happen to be a full-time undertaker. So this is a topic that is unfortunately particularly close to my wallet. Please note, I'm saying this to everybody, speakers included, that the topic tonight is death, not dying. They are 2 extremely different topics altogether. We are here to discuss tonight the concept of death. And I think particularly noteworthy is the fact that for many of us, death, rather than being something to be scared of or fearful of, is something to look forward to. Because for us, certainly in the Jewish world, death brings with it the afterlife, which is entrance into the kingdom of God, there to be rewarded for all the good that we have accomplished and achieved in this world. Although it has to be mentioned that that only comes after a cleansing of the soul for anything we may have done, which is perhaps on the negative side of the commandments. But the idea is that we sit in the kingdom of God. We attempt to fashion ourselves in the image of God. When the Bible says that we're made in the image of God, the rabbis explain that this means that with every for ourselves a heavenly equivalent of whichever part of the body we've either used or is significant of, so that when the time comes, we are able to have literally a heavenly body sitting at the table of God. And this is the purpose of life. And therefore, for us, far more paramount than death is life. The Ethics of the Fathers has a fantastic quote in chapter 4. It says that 1 hour spent in repentance and good deeds in this world is far better than spending the eternity in the world to come, in heaven. And 1 hour of the bliss of heaven is far more enjoyable and beautiful than any enjoyment that you could have in this world. So we get a sense that heaven is a particularly blissful place, but it's not all that it's cracked up to be. It has one serious drawback. Excuse the pun, but that is that you're dead. You're not alive. You can't live. And the purpose of living is to improve oneself. It is to advance in the practice of our religion, in the worshipping of God. And if you're in heaven, you can't do that. You're stuck where you are, which for us is one of, it's probably worse than purgatory on earth. Because if we're not, the Talmud says that we're always moving. So if we're not moving forward, if we're not advancing, then we're regressing, we're moving backwards. And so this world needs to be used to forward ourselves, to continuously better ourselves. And in that sense, it is far more worthwhile than heaven, where all you do is sit and enjoy some bliss, but you don't get anywhere. You can't advance. And therefore, it is far, far better, for example, to live than to martyr yourself. Because martyrs only end up dead, and once they're dead, they can't do anything. They only have a very short-term gain, not a long-term gain. The long-term gain is to not be a martyr. It's to live here, excuse me, and to daily progress in your service of God. I do apologize. How do we get into heaven? Well, the answer isn't quite so simple. In Judaism, the gateway into heaven is to be a creationist. It is to believe that Almighty God has created the world. Almighty God knows how He wants the world to function. And we are those functionaries. And so if we behave in the way Almighty God wants us to, for purely that reason and that reason only, then we have entry into heaven. So for a fine example, if you go and help somebody in the street, if you do it because it's a nice thing to do, you're not getting anywhere. If you do it because purely that's how God wants the world to go around, because it creates peace and it creates unity and it creates camaraderie, then you have entry into heaven. And you don't necessarily have to be Jewish, as we would call it, for that to happen. Because remember, there were the 6 commandments given to Adam, and then more commonly known, the 7 commandments given to Noah. And they came along 1,000 years, 2,000 years before Jews were created or invented. And so there were ways of getting into heaven before you became Jewish. So we don't have to be Jewish to get into heaven. And actually being Jewish is not all it's cracked up to be either, because we have 613 commandments. So there are 613 ways to get to heaven, but quite equally, there are 613 ways into hell. For those who are not Jewish, you have 7 commandments. You've only got 7 ways into heaven, but you've only got 7 ways into hell. So you give and take. But yes, it is open for everyone who believes that God has created the world to be welcomed into the kingdom of heaven. Those who are atheists, what would you want to go to heaven for if you don't believe in God anyway? You don't need to get in there. That ought not to be part of your belief. And anyway, if you want a free dinner, don't ask for the Leviathan. It don't work that way. But ultimately, heaven is our aim and goal. And the way it is achieved is not just by obeying God. It is by finding the role that God has created us for. Each of us is unique. We are all individuals. We're not here to copy anybody else. And so we have to find our own individual role in the world or in society or in our congregation or community, our family. And by achieving that, we make our way into the kingdom of heaven. And therefore the purpose of life is not just a pursuit of God. It is more importantly a pursuit of oneself. There is a very famous story of a rabbi who was a very accomplished one. And he was lying on his deathbed and he was crying his eyes out. And his students asked him, "What are you crying for? You shouldn't need to be worried that you're going to die. You've been a leader of thousands, of hundreds of thousands. You've written books. You're a role model. You're like Moses to us." And he said, I'm not meant to be like Moses. Moses was Moses. I'm worried that I didn't become me. That is our role in this world. And achieving that, together with our belief, our faith, our practice purely for the sake of Almighty God, is our entrance into heaven. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Lee, for your input and contribution. So we'll move on to Sidra Naeem, who is a qualified Islamic scholar and a Muslim chaplain in 4 different sectors. The role most relevant to today's topic is her position as a Muslim chaplain at St. Luke's Hospice, where she comes across a lot of cancer patients who are towards the end of their lives. She offers spiritual, pastoral and counselling support to cancer patients and staff, as well as bereavement counselling and advice related to all matters of death to the families. In her capacity as a scholar, she also gives guidance within the Muslim community. Sidra has additional experience in supporting children who needed bereavement counselling in her capacity as a specialist teacher and special educational coordinator. She has delivered training courses on rituals of death, washing, shrouding and burial of the deceased. I must admit, I've attended one of the courses, how to deal with the death and prepare the body for burial. So I found that very interesting and detailed. So over to Sister Sidra Naeem, second speaker.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And, thank you very much, everybody, for coming from all parts of England today, which is absolutely fantastic that we have opened up this interfaith forum that we do every month to all the other interfaith forums. There's at least 4 different interfaith forums here that we've reached out to. So I think it's absolutely excellent during this pandemic that we keep that interfaith going, especially, in the current climate on what's going on. We need togetherness, we need to bond together. Today's topic is death, and It's very sad, but the most number of deaths in England and around the world have been amongst the people of BAME backgrounds, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, and a good proportion of those have actually been Muslims. So it's actually been rife deaths amongst the Muslim community, and we've had to deal with a lot of death lately, even though in the past we may not have had to. So I'm going to talk to you about death in Islam, and I do have a PowerPoint as usual, which I'm going to share with you. Okay, so faith and death according to Islam, a very current topic according to the current climate. In Islam, death is actually one of our firm beliefs. So the Declaration of Islamic Faith, there are 7 essential things that Muslims have to believe in. And the 7th one, which is the last one, is belief in death and belief in life after death. There are 6 stages to the soul and the life journey of the soul. Very first stage of the life of a soul, according to Islam, is the life before birth. God created all the souls of the descendants of Adam and Eve who were predestined to come to this earth. And that's the life that was spent upstairs, up with God, up in heaven. The second stage is when our soul is released down to earth, and it is actually our life in our mother's wombs. The third stage of our soul is where we are actually now at the moment, life in this world, in which we grow up, which we are familiar with, and from which we acquire good and evil. That actually is a very important stage, which you will find out later on when I continue with this talk. Our fourth stage is the topic we're talking about today, which is our death, our life in the grave or interspace in the fourth stage. That is actually equivalent to within the Christian faith, like the life of the purgatory, what happens there. And that's the fourth stage of human existence. This is wider and vaster than the world in which we live in. The fifth stage is the resurrection on Judgment Day. And the last final stage is the everlasting domain, which comprises the garden or the fire. And that stage actually, what happens to us in that stage is all determined by what we do in stage 3, life in this world. We believe that everyone has to die. Every soul shall have a taste of death. And that's actually in the Quran. So we believe every single thing has to die. While the person is dying, they may get ill. So, you know, I'm linking this in actually with the corona virus as well. So we may find that somebody gets really ill just before they die. What Muslims believe in is that whenever a Muslim is afflicted by harm from sickness or other matters, Allah or God will drop his sins because of that, like a tree drops its leaves. And that is just quite a really good reassurance thing in Muslims, really, when they're ill, because in a way it prepares them for betterment in the afterlife. So if you've got sins, it gets rid of them, so then you can go to heaven in the future. And death is actually a life cycle, which is actually written in the Quran. So it tells us that we start off weak, and then we grow stronger, and then we go back to being weak again. So the whole life cycle is like a big round circle. So Allah or God, it is He who created you in a state of weakness, then gave you strength after weakness, then after strength gave you weakness and grey hair. He creates what He wills, and it is He who is the all-knowing, the all-powerful. And that is actually from the Quran. So everybody has to die, and they will go through that cycle. They will get weaker towards the end, like they were weak as a baby. And then as they are dying, we try and get the person who is dying to say the talqeen. The talqeen is actually the first pillar of Islam, which is the one sentence, which is the testimony of our faith. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, remind your dying men to recite, I testify there is none worthy of worship besides God, and I testify that Muhammad, peace be upon him, is his servant and messenger. And that actually makes them then die as a Muslim. And it's after that stage they cannot repent anymore. It's at that stage then when their soul comes out of their body that all the doors of repentance then close. So it's basically too late then to do any more good or bad yourself, but I will talk about other things that other people can do to help you. And when the person then dies, what we reassure ourselves with is that that person is going back to God who created us in the beginning. Okay, so if you look at that first stage of the soul where I mentioned that we lived up with God, he released us down. So he released us down and we're only going back up to him. So everybody, when they hear of the death, they always say, surely we belong to Allah and to him we shall return. So once somebody dies, we then have a very special washing ritual. It's called ghusl, which means washing of the whole body for the deceased. And we try and do this straight away. So burials in Islam are very quick. If not on the same day, we try and do it the next day. And in that way, our bereavement process is very, very fast in Islam. So we get over the death very, very quickly. It's really, really helpful for us. In fact, I have counseled many people for bereavement counseling, and with Muslims, bereavement counseling is minimal. They get over it for so many reasons. This is one of them. Then after we wash the body, we shroud it. And these are actually the little pieces of cloth are written there, which go around the body. We wrap it up in white. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, wear white cloth, for these are your best clothes, and shroud your dead in them. And then what we do is, after that is done, there is a special funeral prayer. It's called the Janazah, which we say the body is there. And then once we do the funeral prayers, then we put the body in a coffin just for transportation only. Prophet, peace upon him, said, hurry up with the dead body, for if it was righteous, you are forwarding it to a good thing. And we bury, but we do not cremate. We do not cremate because a lot of polytheistic faiths cremate, and Islam actually came to get rid of polytheism. Islam is a monotheistic religion, so we do not cremate, we definitely bury. And there is a reason why we bury, because it goes right back to all the previous nations. And the very first person who actually buried his brother was actually Cain, who killed his brother Abel. This is talking about Adam and Eve's son, which the story is also within Christianity. And he actually buried his brother because we believe that he was shown a sign by God to bury him. This is actually that verse from the Quran. God sent a raven to scratch up the ground and show him how to cover his brother's corpse. After the body is buried, we try not to put flowers on the grave, because that we believe is also a polytheistic faith practice. So we leave the grave as simple as possible. There is a reason for that, so that it doesn't become a shrine. So we do not make shrines out of saints, because that then can lead to idol worship. And because Islam is strictly the worship of one God, then we do try not to do any idol worship, so that we only worship God, and that's it. And it says in the Quran, do you worship besides God that which holds for you no power, harm or benefit, while it is Allah who is the hearing, the all-knowing. And then one thing very specific to Islam, which a lot of people don't know, is that other people who know the person who died can still collect up good deeds for that person in the form of a very special charity called Sadaqah Jariyah. And these are things which will benefit that deceased person in his grave right until the day of judgment. So for example, if you give a wheelchair to a hospital in that person's name, whoever uses that wheelchair, the blessings will go to that person who died. If you open up a well, anybody who drinks from that well, the blessings will go to that person who died. You can give money to charity, to a mosque. You can grow a tree. Anything that eats from that tree or shades under it, the blessings will go to that person who passed away. You could give a Quran or any kind of knowledge to somebody in that person's name, and that person will get good blessings right until the day of judgment. So it is not the be-all and end-all once they pass away when it comes to their good deeds, which is something very, very unique in Islam. Then, once the body is in the grave, we believe from the earth we created you. That's what God says in the Quran. And into it, we will return you. And then from it, we will extract you another time. So it says, and listen on the day when the caller will call out from a place that is near, the day they will hear the blast of the horn in truth. That is the day of emergence from the graves. So we do believe in resurrection, which is the next stage in the soul. And after the soul is resurrected, we do believe that we are going to be returned to God and he will then judge us. So the death you are running away from will inevitably come to you. Then you will be returned to the knower of the seen and unseen, and he will inform you of what you used to do. And it all depends on what we did in stage 3 of our life, which I showed you at the beginning, the world. That then determines whether we, our afterlife, whether we go to heaven or whether we are punished. So all the good deeds are weighed on a scale by God, and good deeds can be anything, from giving money to charity, to looking after the poor, to being good to our neighbors, our parents, anything in the name of religion. And bad, everybody knows all the sins like murder or even committing suicide is not allowed in Islam, which I want to make that very clear. We believe, as you saw on that chart at the beginning, God made us. So it is up to him then to take our life when he wants to. We are not allowed to take that life ourselves, because we are then tampering with destiny, and we are then taking over the lead from God when we want to die instead of him determining when we die. So committing suicide actually leads to hellfire. And then comes the eternal afterlife. We have already done a lecture on the afterlife last year as part of Havering Interfaith Forum. So I'm not going to cover any of the afterlife, but if you go on this YouTube channel, this is the name at the top, you can see that lecture there to see the afterlife. And at the bottom is my Facebook page, which some of you might have seen when you came on today, that has future interfaith forums written on there as well. So I'm going to stop now, and we will take questions at the end after we have heard the other two speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sidra, for your presentation and contribution. Now we'll welcome our Sikh specialist speaker, expert on Sikhism, and we're looking for the views on death and rituals of death and beliefs around death from the Sikh perspective. So I'll pass you over to our learned Sikh speaker, Lakveer Singh Bhoi. He's from Gurdwara in Chadwell Heath, I believe it is, or Seven Kings. And welcome to Lakveer.
Okay, it's a good evening, everybody. It's a two-part, faith and death. I'm just very briefly going to talk about the faith first, then I come to the death. Okay, what is the Sikh faith? The Sikh Sikh calls their faith Gurmat. Gurmat means the way of the Gurus. According to the Sikh tradition, Sikh faith was established by Guru Nanak Dev Ji in 1469. Faith is simply belief without evidence, or complete trust, or confidence in someone. The evolution of religion continued in the manners of for a period of about 239 years, with the succession of 10 living gurus from 1469 to 1708. All 10 human gurus, 6 beliefs were inhabited a single spirit. Thereafter, it refers only the Sikh scripture, the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Guru means the spiritual teacher, leading light, mentor. Guru has two slavers, Guru and Ru. Guru means darkness, Ru means light. A Guru is someone who is able to take you from darkness to light. Sikh faith is the 5th largest world religion with over 25 million devotees worldwide. Sikh faith believes in one God who is the creator of the universe and resides within creation, but is not limited to the creation. God is a formless, fearless, and beyond the birth and death. The purpose of human life is to unite the mind with the God during a lifetime. This is possible through accepting the teaching of the Guru. And the 3 golden rules are pillars of the Sikhism. The 3 pillars of the Sikhism are: remember God, earn a living, and share with others. Guru Nanak Dev Ji formed 3 basic guidelines for Sikhs. Naam Japna means focus of God. Kirt Karna, honest living. And third one is Band Shakna means sharing with others. That's about Sikh faith. Now I'm come to the death. Everyone is concerned about which is inevitable and none known its time. A fatal accident can cause death in no time. Still, we have forgotten death and the badly involved in worldly affairs. Even science has failed to conquer it completely. It's a law of the nature that everyone who is born will die, but still everyone wants to avoid it. It is a universal experience which one must face sometime. It is not a differentiate between rich and poor, or between the young and the old. It is a mystery, and none of certain about what happened after death. Most of us long for heaven after death. Some says that body is subject to death and soul is immortal, while others do not agree. For some, death is tragedy for which they never recover. For others, it is a transformation. Most of us believe that God created and destroyed the world, but atheists do not believe. Sikh faith and afterlife. Sikh faith teaches that soul reincarnates. When the body dies, Sikhs do not believe in an afterlife. That is either heaven or hell. They believe that good or bad action in this life determine the life from into which a soul takes rebirth. Death is only progressive of soul on its journey from God through the created universe and back to God again. What's happened when a Sikh dies? Generally, what's happening traditionally, when a person dies, we wash their body and dress up with the new clothes. Also, traditionally, Sikh prefer to cremation to burial. After the cremation, ritual service carried out at the Gurdwara or at their home. The cremated ashes are typically submerged in a river. In Gurbani teaches us, when I say Gurbani, it's our holy book, which is Sri Guru Granth Sahib. Gurbani teaches us that death is inevitable. It is law of the nature. So whosoever is born must die, rich and poor, young and old die. Guru Nanak Dev Ji said in Guru Granth Sahib, page number 477. I'm not going to read in Punjabi, I'm just going to translate in English. It means, whosoever has come shall depart, all shall have their turn. Also written in there, with their death already preordained, mortals come into this world. How can they remain here? They have to go to their worlds beyond. Death knows no time. Nobody knows the time of death, but only God knows it. Some dies in infancy, while other dies in old age. Death do not consider time, age, or place. Sometimes it occurs due to the unexpected causes. It is a good that we do not know that time of our death. Had we know it, our progress would have stopped. Guru Nanak Dev said also, death doesn't ask time. It doesn't ask the date or the day of the week. The one Lord himself destroyed and also preserved nothing at all. It is in hands our mortal beings. According to Gurvani, only the God controls death. He has the power of create and destroy. None can interfere or order him. Everyone is under his command. It doesn't mean that we should not take precautions or refuse medical treatments. Guru Nanak Dev Ji said also in Guru Granth Sahib, page number 940, everyone comes here at the Lord's command, lives in his will, and remains merged to in the Lord's will. He also said, Guru Nanak Dev Ji in page number 660, we are human beings of the single breath. We do not know the appointed time of our departure. Our soul and breath is also said in page number 846 in Guru Granth Sahib. As the ray blends with the sun and the water merges with water, so the movement lights with the supreme light and become totally perfect. And also in Gurvani said, Gurvani teaches us that we should not be afraid of death and live an honest life, remembering God. This life is a temporary and everyone has to leave this world sooner or later. We should not think for hell or heaven, rather desire to unite with the God. And lastly, I will say a few words. According to the Gurvani, death is inevitable and it is time, it's fixed by God. We should not be afraid of death. Rather, we should lead an honest life, remember God, and live a humble life. Death unites holy person with the God.
Okay, welcome, John. And John, as we all know, is the chair of Havering Interfaith Forum. John is the Bahai speaker for today, and the topic, as we discussed earlier, is rituals and rites of death or views on death. So I'll pass you over to John Lester. Thank you, John.
We have a little warning in one of Baha'u'llah's writings. O son of being, bring thyself to account each day ere thou art summoned to a reckoning. For death unheralded shall come upon thee, and thou shalt be called to give account for thy deeds. And if that sounds gloomy, O son of the Supreme, I have made death a messenger of joy to thee. Wherefore dost thou grieve? I made the light to shed on thee its splendor. Why dost thou veil thyself therefrom? So death is not something to grieve for. Although, wherefore dost thou grieve? It's your own death you're grieving for. It had me concerned for years, because whenever someone in the Baha'i faith dies, the first message the universe has justice says is grieve to announce the passing. And I thought, but it says there, wherefore dost thou grieve? But it was explained, it's actually one's own grief. One's death one is not grieving for. Of course you grieve for the deaths of others, because you aren't going to see them on this plane again. It's a bit like, as someone once explained, farewelling someone on a journey. When you go to a funeral, it's like farewelling someone at the railway station, going on a journey that you yourself will go on to sometime in the future. So the Baha'i attitude to death is, in that sense, quite positive. Of course, we all die, but this is our physical temple, if you like, while we're here. When we're in the womb, life after womb was what we were looking for. And so we were born, and then this is our kind of spiritual womb. In this life, we are building up the spiritual arms and legs, etc., that we'll need in the next world, which is a spiritual realm, not a physical one. And the extent to which we do that and do it properly and do it well is the key thing as to how we will progress in the worlds beyond. Baha'u'llah says some very positive things about death. He says, for example, it is clear and evident that all men shall, after their physical death, estimate the worth of their deeds and realize all that their hands have wrought. I swear by the day star that shineth above the horizon of divine power, they that are the followers of the one true God shall, the moment they depart out of this life, experience such joy and gladness that would be impossible to describe. A way lived in error shall we seize of such fear and trembling, and shall be filled with such consternation as nothing can exceed. We will, in other words, realize what we have done on this earth. And our punishment in the next world, if you like, is our realization. If we have done bad things in this world, then our soul is burdened with what we have done. And that's so we are in the situation where we don't feel unexplainably happy when we pass on to the next world. Baha'u'llah says human souls continue to be aware of each other. And it says, know thou of a truth that the soul, after its separation from the body, will continue to progress until it attaineth the presence of God in a state and condition which neither the revolution of ages and centuries nor the changes and chances of this world can alter. The nature, though, he says, of the soul after death can never be described, nor is it meet and permissible to reveal its whole character to the eyes of men. It's like trying to describe to the fetus in the womb what life is like out here. We don't have the language for it. We don't have the ability to comprehend what the life after death is, except it's a spiritual one. And it's not a status quo. It's not a form of stasis. Stasis does not exist. We continue to advance. We continue to progress in the next world. But in the next world, we progress at the bounty of God. Whereas in this world, we progress by our own actions, our own deeds, gradually building up our spiritual selves to take a place in the next world, where we will serve. We will continue to serve in the next world, be part of the concourse on high. One Baha'i who was dying of cancer said to her husband, now we can do nothing in our side of the world unless you pray. In other words, she was getting ready for work in the next world. But she was very troubled because she wasn't able to teach anyone the Baha'i faith. And she said, the assistance will be cut off if I can't teach people the Baha'i faith. So they prayed, and along came the nurse with an assistant, and the assistant was a Baha'i and recognized Jeanette Patrick. Well, what's the Baha'i faith, says the nurse, and Jeanette told her about the Baha'i faith and died that night. So on the last day on earth, she got her wish and then went on to serve in the next world. So what is the notion of heaven and hell? Well, heaven is closeness to God. Hell is remoteness from God. But remembering that we progress in the next world at the bounty of God, it means that we will always be gradually moving towards God. It's just that some of us will have a longer way to go. So it's a matter of progress. And those who enjoy near access to God cannot conceive of the notion of I. In other words, we've completely lost our egos. We're concerned only with the moment. So is this confined to Baha'is only? Well, no, it isn't. You build up your character. You're building up things. Remembering that Baha'is believe all faiths come from the same source, the same God. There is only one God, an unknowable essence, known by the manifestations of God, who are the creators, the founders of the new religions. And yes, of course, you go to God because of your actions. If you don't believe in God, what happens then? Well, then Abdu'l-Baha says you receive the pardon of God. Because there's a great difference between someone who does not believe in God and does good deeds, and someone who does not believe in God and does not good deeds. You're still building up your soul by your actions, by your kindness, by what you do, by obeying the laws of God. So death is a spiritual birth, in effect. You're spiritually being born into the next world. You're leading this flat, whatever, this building you've been tenanting on this plane, moving into the next one. Do we look forward to death? Well, I suppose we ought to, but there's I think one's concerned about all the things one has to do here on this plane before one goes. It would be nice if everything was nicely tidied up and everything is nice and sorted, and then you sort of sail off. But I think the fear is that maybe you aren't, and there's all kinds of things and problems that you're leaving unresolved. So I think that the concern about dying is dying before you've done all that you need to do, all that you could do, all you could do in the service of God, all you can do on this plane. So it's really quite a positive sense. We don't have two separate places. There's no fiery furnace, which is a metaphor for suffering. There's no two places. It's a condition. It's a condition of the soul. And the soul, whether the soul is close to God or the soul is remote from God. And as I said, those who enjoy near access to God cannot think of the concept of I. And in this sense, there's not a lot of difference between that and nirvana. People say nirvana means you don't believe in God because you've relinquished yourself. But relinquishing yourself is actually your goal, because you're no longer a victim of your ego. And your ego effectively is the devil. The ego is the thing that tells you you should do things for yourself, only for yourself, and everybody else doesn't matter. So that's basically, I suppose, what the Baha'is believe, that death is a messenger of joy for the individual. Therefore dost thou grieve. Of course, we grieve for others because we won't be seeing them for a long time. Seeing in the spiritual sense, of course. It's a matter of progression, that we progress for the bounty of God in the next world, having built up our spiritual attributes in this world. This is our spiritual womb. And it's a matter of where you fit in on that continuum, how close you are to God, how far you are from God, and you progress at the bounty of God in the next world. Whereas here you build up your spiritual eyes and ears and so on. And I think that's about all I need to say about the Baha'i attitude to death.
Okay, thank you very much, John. A very clear discussion around death. And are we ready to move on to the question and answer session? We can quiz our 4 experts, see what the different viewpoints are, explore them a little bit. I'll give you 10 seconds to come up with a question, otherwise I'll fire mine.
I've got a question.
Thank you, Natalie. There's a question about views of everyone. Is from Tracy to all our speakers. Views of everyone on euthanasia. So shall we start with one of our speakers first?
Okay. When I was at university, I was studying ethics, and I wrote a paper on medical ethics. At the time, there was a young 17-year-old in Scotland who had been injured in a rugby match and was in a permanent vegetative state. And the law being different in Scotland than it was in England, the doctors took the case to the House of Lords to see if they could be prosecuted for carrying out a euthanasia on this young man. All the newspapers reported the story. They also interviewed all the faith leaders they could find. Not a single faith leader actually said in that interview what their faith actually believed. And I cross-referenced it because I checked up on all the books. And whenever a faith said they don't believe in it, they did not say that to this interview at all. All they said was, you have to understand this family going through hell, and we really need to appreciate what they're feeling. So whatever anyone's going to say about euthanasia, faith, practice are two opposites. And you cannot answer that question till you're facing it yourself.
Okay. And my viewpoint on that is, in Islamically, we do not do any assisted suicide. We do not believe in killing of people in any shape or form. Killing one person is not killing the whole of mankind. With euthanasia, what that is really is killing somebody before God has ordained for that person to be killed. And if you look at the 7 declarations of our faith, which I spoke about at the beginning, one of those was actually believing in destiny and believing that everything good and bad is from God. So we believe that if we ourselves then kill somebody, it is like tampering with destiny. It's tampering with the time when God has ordained for us to go. So we do not believe in that, and it comes actually under the same category of committing suicide, because committing suicide is again under the same banner of taking our own lives without taking into consideration when God has ordained for us to go. Okay, so that answers my question, my faith's perspective. Lakva, your third
question. The answer in our religion, right? The lady asked me. We don't believe in anybody killing like that, anything like that, you know. But if it's a sin against, if you kill somebody, it's really not. I would not say. Well, it's like a bad thing. It's killing. That's I can say. I don't know. We don't believe in killing anybody.
Okay, we can move on to John. For your view, John, on euthanasia.
Yeah. The Bahai faith, I think, similar to Islam, where we don't condone euthanasia. But I think one other thing is that we don't condone suicide either. Suicide is forbidden. But we do not believe that if you commit suicide, you're eternally damned as a result, because God is forgiving and God is caring and God is knowing. And there were suicides when Baha'u'llah died. People couldn't face life without Baha'u'llah, and so they drowned themselves. It would be a bit hard to punish them for that. And the messenger of God has gone and they commit suicide. So no, we don't condone euthanasia. Again, though, there would be understanding from God as to the motivation and so on. But no, suicide is not permitted. I mean, sorry, euthanasia is not permitted in the Bahai faith.
Okay, thank you very much.
There's 2 questions in the chat.
There is.
Yeah.
There's one question from Natalie about what do Muslims believe happens to non-Muslims and atheists after their death. I would quickly add something. I think Muslims' necks are not off the hook either. So I'll pass that over to, I think Sister Sidra is the first most appropriate for that question.
Obviously I will answer that one as the Muslim speaker. So now it's entirely up to God like Brother Tariq said, even we don't know if we're off the hook. So it's up to God completely. He is the one who will decide, he will judge, and he will weigh up our books. We have 2 books. On our right-hand shoulder is the good angel writing down all the good deeds throughout our life from puberty onwards, and on our left shoulder is the angel writing down all our bad deeds. And then on the day of judgment, our book will be weighed on the scales, like I showed, and then God will decide where we will go, what our final destination is. We are not allowed to say to anybody that you're going to go to hell and we're going to go to heaven because we're Muslim, because we don't know. There could be people out there who don't even believe in God, but they could be better people than we are, because only God knows what is in their hearts, and only God knows what good deeds they've done. And don't forget, it's not just deeds that you show outwardly, even inward thoughts are counted as well, and there may be good deeds in our heart which other people don't see, which may be counted as well. So basically it's up to God, and we don't know.
So Sidra, then why do you place so much emphasis on people saying certain words as they are dying? Does that affect what's going to happen to them?
Yes, well, the probability is higher in Islam if, first of all, you believe in a God, because the God is the one who's going to judge you in the end. So if you don't even believe in him, then, you know, you've got less of a chance, haven't you? So that's the first thing. The other thing is why we try and say Muhammad, peace be upon him, is that he is the last prophet. And by saying his name, it means that we believe in all the messengers before, including all their books and everything they've taught us as well. So we are taking on board all the previous religions as well. So it's
in your view, God does take account of faith as well as deeds, going to the balance.
Yes, to a certain extent. Like I said, if you don't believe in God in the first place, and he's the one who is judging us, the probability may be less, but like I said, it's up to God. In the end, he will decide. Okay,
right.
Move on to the next question.
Okay, there's a question in the chat. So do Sikhs believe that they will be reincarnated as Sikhs, or can non-Sikhs be reincarnated as Sikhs?
I'm asking about whether if you're a Sikh, you're going to be reincarnated as a Sikh, or do you choose to be a Sikh?
No, it's depend on their deeds. If they have a good deeds and other bad deeds, whatever they maybe can be any Muslim or Sikh, I don't know. It depends on their what they have done, good deed or bad deeds. It depends on that. If I kill some Muslim guy, right, I have to pay. Might be I'm in the next my life, and I have to become a Muslim, and he become the Sikh. He has to kill me. It's vice versa. Understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't matter which religion is it. I have to be born in a Sikh. Maybe I'm born. Might be I'm in the last my life as a Muslim. I know I'm a Sikh.
We have another question on the chat. Would you not even consider assisted suicide if a close family member was in terrible pain and in distress? You would not keep an animal alive in such distress, so why not a human?
It was my opening gambit. Practice and theory are often two very opposite things. And when you are faced with looking at someone in pain and in agony and suffering, what is the likelihood that you're going to say, well, the book says I've got to let them do it? Probably not very high. That's the issue that we deal with. We can all tell everybody what our books say. It's what personal experience will make us do. It will probably be the exact opposite.
Yes. Okay, the Islamic point of view now next, the second speaker, is that it depends on what the doctors say. So, for example, during the pandemic, there were thousands and thousands of Muslims that were under life support machines and they couldn't breathe. And the doctors turned around and said that there is no hope. They're not going to pull through, and we're going to turn off the machine now. And in that case, then the family had no choice at all, because you have to follow the law of the land. And the law of the land said at the moment, the life support machines were needed for other people who needed them more. So we did come across this, particularly in this pandemic. In that case, we can't do anything. So many people who had no concept of being alive in the future, yes, their life support machines were switched off. In the past, before the pandemic, we have had some people who have been completely brain dead and they were on life support machines, and basically the doctors said there is no hope at all. He's just a dead person, completely dead. He doesn't know where he is, what he's doing. And if we turned off the machine, it would be the same as it being on. In that case, fine, then we would switch it off. Okay, so it depends where you draw the line. But on the whole, if the doctors say that, look, this person is not alive, there's no hope of him whatsoever now getting better, then in that case, the machine would have to be switched. Okay?
Okay. Thank you to our second speaker. Lakvir, a third speaker.
I agree with Sidra, same thing in our religion, you know.
John.
I think one of the reasons for the treating is that there will be cases where it does seem, you know, so much better to let the person go. But if you have some rule that allows that, then it could be disabused, so you can quite calmly get rid of someone you don't like very much on the grounds that they were in pain. So it's a matter of making sure that murder does not happen under the guise of euthanasia. And of course, once the person's gone, they've gone. You can't say, "I'll change my mind and bring them back again." So that's my main thoughts there.
John, would you take into account advance directives? So if the person has said, I don't want to suffer, and if I'm not going to survive to a great life, I don't want to continue existing, just breathing.
Well, currently we can't, because the law is against it.
But if the law allowed the medical profession to take advantage of advanced directives, what is your view? Should I be allowed to say that these are the circumstances under which I do not want to be kept alive? The advanced directive form at the moment goes into very great detail of, in this situation, this is what I want to happen to me. In this other situation, this is what I would like to have. And, you know, I would like to think that my wishes would be respected. And I'm saying that I might quite, it's not murder if I would want that.
Because the Baha'i faith still says that currently says that you shouldn't do it. The Universal House of Justice may make a ruling on that, of course, at some stage, but currently that is the situation.
You can have a do not resuscitate order put in place, though, so they won't actually physically bring you back round again.
I think it's time for my question. I'd like to ask this question about enjoyment in heaven. That phrase was mentioned by our Rabbi Lee. Enjoyment in heaven. When we have enjoyment on earth, it changes our mood, it changes the chemicals in the brain. I'm trying to understand what a spirit in the next world, how would they know what is enjoyment? How would they feel its enjoyment? How are we going to feel something nice to look forward to in the pleasure in paradise? How will the soul, which doesn't have a physical body, feel enjoyment? I'm asking that to Rabbi Lee.
I think the answer to that is that the soul will be living in a different dimension. And so I suppose it will be sort of as equal in heaven as the body is on soul, on earth. So as much as the physical body can enjoy physical enjoyment on earth, the spiritual soul can enjoy spiritual enjoyment in heaven. In fact, it happens down here on earth as well.
Yes.
There is a very simple question that everyone asks. Your body survives by eating food on earth. How does your soul survive? And the answer is that absolutely everything that's created has an element of a spiritual soul in it. And so when you eat food, your physical body enjoys the physical element of the food, and your soul enjoys the spiritual soul of that food.
Okay.
So it has a parallel way of feeling things like your body does.
There's another question here in the chat to Rabbi Lee Sunderland. What does your book say about Jesus and Muhammad or other messengers, and what was the mission of the Prophet Moses?
Okay, our books is a bit of a misnomer there, because Jesus and Muhammad didn't come along until some of our major works had already been published. And so Muhammad, I don't think, gets a mention in the Talmud at all because he wasn't around at the time. The simple fact is that Christianity and Islam are monotheistic religions, and therefore they get every respect in that sense. And so Jesus and Muhammad, we may not consider to be prophets, but they certainly were spiritual leaders and mentors and role models. Moses has got a bit of a funny job, because there's a great misnomer thrown at the Jews, and that is that we're called the chosen people. We're not the chosen people. We're the chosen people. And the difference is very simply, we're not chosen. We're not special. We're not different. We're not better than anybody else. But we are the chosen people. We don't have one particular figure through whom God communicates. He communicates through each and every single one of us. Moses is in the position where, before the Ten Commandments and the Bible are given, he is sent by God to bring the people out of Egypt. And he is sent there because he is a very meek soul, a shepherding kind of person who will look after others and think of the weakest of others. But when they get to Mount Sinai, he is no better or different than anybody else. And so the scene is that God starts to speak the Ten Commandments. The people get absolutely petrified. When you led us out of Egypt, you go out and find out what he's got to say. And so the people actually choose Moses to go up and get the Ten Commandments. So they make him their sort of conduit between themselves and God. But it goes not much further than that. We don't get the word of God delivered to us by Moses as if he's some sort of higher being than anybody else. He's the same as everybody else. It's each and every one of us who has that exact same ability and capability as Moses had. Okay. And that's why we're actually called the chosen people, because it's an entire nation that is chosen by God, not just an individual.
Okay, there's another question in the chat from Sarah. Can the speakers share a short verse or dedication that captures the essence of the funeral rite for them as a consolation and or celebration of life and passing? Lee, you're first again.
Yeah, I thought I'd get the short straw on this one.
You're busy.
Yes, far too busy. I think for me it has to be the phrase that says, Your justice and your mercy are full of discerned righteousness. It's addressed at God, and it means that God is the giver of life and the giver of death. That it's not anything random. It is something which Almighty God discerns for each and every one of us. He decides, he, she, it decides where, when, and to whom we will be born, what standard of living we will enjoy, and where and when we will die. And it is for us something that means, you know, there's some things that human beings just don't understand. And life and death is one of them. So put your faith in God. Enjoy the good. Take the challenge of the not so good, but trust that it is all somehow or other a part of the jigsaw that makes up your life. And you just need to achieve as much as you possibly can. But don't expect to be able to understand it, because we can't. We're not God. We're human. And there is no way we can understand a lot of what God gets up to.
Okay, Sidra, your turn. Okay. About short verse dedication.
Yes, our verse definitely would be, in Arabic I'll say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. What that means is, surely we belong to Allah and to Him is our return. And that is something that we would say as soon as the person passes away, and also at the funeral as well, where we are actually acknowledging that it is God who made us, and it is to Him that we have now gone back and returned. I already spoke about the 6 stages of the soul, and the very first stage was we were with Him at the beginning. This life is a test, it is an amusement, it is a short journey, like a traveler travels through, travels through for a short while. It is not our final destination, it is a test. So whatever we do on this world is a test. And on that funeral, some of the good things are usually remembered. Any, interfaith work, for example, that the person did, or charity work, or fed the homeless, or helped his neighbors, that kind of stuff would all be said at the funeral. And then everybody would pray that he goes to heaven, and then we could all meet him again one day, him or her. So that is usually how the funeral prayer ends, is may he go to heaven, and may we all meet him there one day. Okay?
Lekve, if you can unmute yourself, and the question is now on to you. Is there a short verse or dedication that captures the essence of the funeral rite for the deceased?
Okay, in our Guru Granth Sahib, right, this page number 923 says, "Let no one be for me after I die. That is not all pleasing to me." The further I said, "One who is eased with the Lord's will is a devotee, the true Guru and the sublime person." He also say other one as well. Yeah, that's other thing as said as well. And we should submit to the will of the Lord and pray that departed soul may rest in peace. Gurvani says people cry not for the deed, but how they affect them. That's what Gurvani say about this. That's our holy book says.
Let's move on to John.
Well, Baha'is must be buried because Baha'u'llah said the body comes into existence gradually and should go out of existence gradually. Doesn't mean you suffer if you happen to be cremated or inadvertently cremated, like in an air crash. There's a special prayer for the dead, and I'll read part of it because it gives you something about that. Deal with him, her, O thou who forgivest the sins of men and concealest their faults, as we see with the heaven of thy bounty and the ocean of thy grace, give him admission within the precincts of thy transcendent mercy that was before the foundation of earth and heaven. There is no God but thee, the ever forgiving, the most generous. And you say Allahu Akbar 6 times, that means God the all glorious. And then you repeat 19 times each, we all verily worship God, we all verily bow down before God, we all verily are devoted unto God, we all verily give praise unto God, we all verily yield thanks unto God, we all verily are patient in God. And in one of the other prayers for the dead, it finishes, I testify, my Lord, that thou hast enjoined upon men to honour their guest, and he that ascended unto thee hath verily reached thee and attained thy presence. Deal with him then according to thy grace and thy bounty. So that's part of what Baha'is believe. As I say, we are buried, not cremated, and there is a special prayer for the departed.
So, John, a question directed at yourself. Can you share about the death of Jesus? I'm not exactly sure in what sense, but maybe what your faith believes about the death of Jesus.
Baha'is believe that the resurrection was a spiritual one, because the cause of God was dead for 3 days, if you like. When the chief disciple had denied Christ, and one of the other disciples had betrayed him, and it was only revived when 3 days later, when there was a recognition that this was not the end. So we don't believe that there's a physical resurrection of Christ, but it's a spiritual one. Christ, after all, was in the Gospels, after something like 3 weeks or so, he vanishes again. And as someone once said about the raising of Lazarus from the dead as a great miracle, and the question was, how long did he live? And he said, well, he's not alive now, is he? So he must have died. What was the point of bringing him back to life so he could die again? So if you take it literally, that's obviously a question. If you take it spiritually, that someone who's spiritually dead becomes spiritually alive, that's a very great difference altogether. And it's the spiritual resurrection that's the important thing. The cause of God came alive again. The great miracle of Christianity is that, with its founder crucified, and I say its main apostle denying Christ, and one of the other ones betraying him, there is no way this religion is going to go anywhere. But it did. But no, we don't literally believe literally that. The question, it's interesting, there was some of the question about who moved the stone, and it depends which gospel you read, because according to Matthew, there was an earthquake, and that did the job. So it's, but no, we believe that it's a spiritual resurrection, not a physical one. Yes. Saw the light, and they see it suddenly dawned on them that physical death is not the end. Physical death is it's a spiritual release.
According to Matthew, all the virtuous were, all the elders were physically resurrected at the time of Jesus' death. But I'm always surprised that isn't illustrated in Christian art. It would be rather a fantastic event, but they ignore it.
I also read that the disciples all fled when Jesus was being crucified. They all fled.
Not in the text.
Is it?
Not as far as I remember.
Okay.
The only one that's mentioned is Peter denying him 3 times.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question to Sidra about how God puts a soul into the baby? And the soul, God's essence is it's a spiritual being. Is that a part of God, or is that something under the control of God? The souls that he sends into the humans, the essence, is it different or similar to God?
Okay. not quite sure what that question meant, but it is God who made the soul in the first place up there. And that was number one, wasn't it, in the stages? And we are living up there with God until it is a time for us then to come down, which God decides. God, we actually choose our families up there, which family we want to go into. We choose our parents. And then God puts us into our mother's wombs at approximately 4 months and 10 days. And that's when we enter our mum's wombs. We are in the form of a soul in there, and we do not really, we're not conscious, so we don't know what's happening, but we can hear things, definitely. Then when we are born, then we are fully conscious in this world, okay? And then it's the same soul then that leaves our body like it came in our body. It leaves our body when we die, and then goes into the interspace, which is the purgatory in the grave. And then it's that soul then that then is resurrected on the day of judgment. And then it's that soul which goes up to heaven, hopefully, and then goes up to wherever Allah has destined for us to go. So it's basically the soul is us, the body is just an outer covering really that Allah has chosen for us to go in, but the soul is us inside. It is our soul that matters, not our outsides. Okay, what was the relationship between God and Guru Nanak to worship him? I think that one is relevant.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Okay. Guru Nanak is like a spiritual teacher. He's not God. And because he was sent by the God to convey his message to the people, the true Guru was the one God. That is a relationship between whatever God said to him, and he passed the message to the other people. There's no, I don't know what the relationship between Guru and God. I don't know. That's I can understand. Is it okay?
Yes, that's
that's
fine. You made it clear.
I have a question, please.
Yes, yes.
I'm curious about this, and it came up in a conversation with me preparing my will and leaving instructions on my burial. And the solicitor said there may come a time in the future, like now in COVID, in the last year, some Muslims weren't able to get the rights that they would have normally had, like the washing and the burial and wrapping in the cloth. They were just buried in the body bags because of COVID, and because they were dying so quickly, there wasn't time to do everything. Now, if in the future there's a ruling that everyone has to be cremated because of some plague or other, and because it's not safe to bury, how does that affect us as Muslims?
Now, that is a very, very interesting question, I must say, and I've never had that question before, but luckily I can answer it fully, okay? Okay, and I think it's a very good question. I can answer it very well. Okay, when the COVID happened, there was a time when we could not even wash our bodies. So the ritual already of washing the bodies had to go. So we couldn't wash. So we had to follow the law of the land. Again, with cremation, if it ever came to that, then yes, we would have to follow the law of the land, even though it is against our religion, but if that's what the government has said. However, what we do believe is that when you cremate, the soul can still feel pain. So when we, for example, do the washing ritual, everything's done very, very gently, because we believe, and post-mortems we don't do either. We believe that the soul can feel pain. So one, the soul will feel the pain if they are cremated. But the second thing is that they will still be resurrected on the day of judgment, because we believe that we are resurrected from our coccyx bone, And even, did you know, when you cremate somebody, the coccyx bone, tiny bone, does not disintegrate, even under very high pressure. That is medically proven. So even if we become ashes, in those ashes, the coccyx bone will still be there in that jar, okay? And we believe that in that coccyx bone are stem cells, and it will still rise again on the Day of Judgment. So the cremation will not affect us resurrecting again on the Day of Judgment. However, we will feel pain at the time of the cremation.
So it doesn't matter where those ashes will be scattered.
No, it won't matter. It won't matter.
The coccyx bone will remain.
It will remain, yes. And we know that on the Day of Judgment, not just Muslims that are going to be resurrected, everybody's going to be.
Well, that gives me some relief.
Yes, the whole world, definitely. I liked that question, by the way. I thought that was a really interesting one to the normal ones.
Could I just make a comment, please? We in the Jewish community had exactly the same problem way back in March, April, May last year. And what we ended up doing actually was working on the festivals when we're actually not allowed to work. We got permission for the first time in 600 years to break the rules and work so that we could bury people on the festival, so that we could keep up with the numbers and wouldn't have to cremate. We would do almost anything possible to make sure that we do not cremate. And that's exactly what we had to do.
However, John, if the government said of this country that you have to cremate, you would not be able to go against the law, would you, as a Jewish person?
No, we wouldn't be able to go against, mind you, that does depend, because in our faith, the law of the land is only with reference to jurisprudence, not with reference to spiritual law. And dealing with the dead is a spiritual matter, not any other kind. And so we would really do anything possible to make sure that we didn't have to cremate.
So there'll be riots.
Because in our faith, well, there really was. That's why we had to work on the festivals. We had to work on the days we're not allowed to work, so that we could keep up with the numbers. And it was actually a threat given to us: if we don't keep up, we're going to have to cremate. So we decided, right, we'll work when we're not allowed to work. So
I think, according to Islam, there would definitely be a kick up as well. Definitely, nobody would give in that easily. And
oh gosh, yeah. I think we got together in the House of Commons.
Yes, but if worse came worse, then that is what would have to happen. But like I said, we would definitely try and speak up. Okay, it says, Sidra, what does Islam say about Jesus? Okay, so what we believe as Muslims is that he didn't die. Okay, we believe that God lifted him up, body and soul, up to himself, because he saved him from dying, because God doesn't let any of his major prophets die. And we believe that towards the Day of Judgment, he will come down again. Jesus will come down again, body and soul. As he was lifted up, he will come down. And he will come at a time, actually, where there will be lots and lots of problems in the world, like there is now. And he will kill the Antichrist. And when he comes, there will be all peace on the land, to such an extent that, you know, the lions and the tigers will be able to be amongst the sheep very, very peacefully. There will be no venom in the snakes, the kind of stuff that's written in the Old Testament. So we believe in that as well. There will be all peace on earth. And we are awaiting him, just like Christians, for him to come back to earth. And any day now is what I can say, because the way the world's going, if there is a time for him to come, it will be now. Okay?
Can I make a comment here about, because Baha'is believe the Day of Judgment is the coming of the new manifestation of God. So that the Day of Judgment was the coming of Baha'u'llah. So we believe that when you pass on, your soul doesn't have to hang around and wait for a Day of Judgment. It goes straight to God. The soul, we believe, enters the body at the point of conception, and any child that is miscarried automatically goes straight to God. I don't know if that's the same in Islam. Any child that's miscarried, born dead or anything like that, or dies in infancy, goes straight to God.
Yes, we believe the same as well. Before puberty, everybody is sinless before puberty, and they go straight up to heaven.
A quick question for Sidra.
Sure.
Yes.
I've heard that when Muslim die during a pandemic, they die with shaheed status.
Yes,
what does that actually mean?
Well, basically, this is a pandemic, really, that affected the whole world. And it's not their fault, really, that they got this. It was really completely out of their control. And they die as martyrs would. So that's what we believe. And also the other way of looking at it is, because they have been ill, all their sins have completely been forgiven. Like I said in my talk, when you get ill, just before you die, all your sins, they come off you like leaves fall off a tree. So in a way, then exactly the same, they are dying sinless, aren't they? Because all their sins have been forgiven before they die, especially the ones who've been on ventilators and things like that, been very, very ill in hospital. Their sins have all fallen off them. So
is that written in the Hadith or the Quran, or is that
in the
scholars
Hadith? Yes, it's in the Hadith.
Oh, it is in the
Hadiths, Muslim and Bukhari.
Okay.
I did put up on my slides.
Okay.
It's definitely there.
I'm sorry you didn't manage to get a Christian along, because I have been to a funeral where the sermon was that the kingdom of heaven is reserved for true believers. As the funeral was actually of an atheist Jewish woman, but it was conducted by a Methodist minister, I thought it took the biscuit as the most tactless funeral sermon that could possibly ever be given. But I would like to, I'm interested in the Christian view as well. But
okay, the question is to Sidra, clarify the journey of the soul after they are buried.
Okay. It's an absolutely beautiful journey of the soul. It really is. It's a whole lecture of its own. It's on my YouTube channel, the life's journey, the soul's journey through death, it's called. So it's really interesting, but the soul leaves the body at the time of the funeral, and it can actually see itself. Did you know, while you're washing it and burying it? At the time the body is put inside the grave, then the soul then goes back into the body again, and it's questioned again, the Shahada, the first testimony of faith, who is your Lord, who is your Prophet, and you know, and in a way, you know, at that point in the grave whether you are going to be going to heaven or hell. Even then, you see, you know, at that stage, you see a vision of whether you're going to go to heaven or whether you're going to go to hell. Even before that, just as you die, your soul is lifted up to God, and your God and God takes your book from you. You know, the book that is being written on your shoulders. And when God takes that book from you, it's at that stage you actually know your destiny. Because as you're going up, you will smell beautiful, and the angels will greet you and smile at you and say that, you know, they are very, very happy with you, and you've done really well, and well done, congratulations, kind of thing. And you come back with a shining face, and you're just all wonderful and lovely. And if you're a bad soul, your soul stinks and smells, and nobody wants to even greet you. And your book is snatched from you, and you're thrown back down on earth, and that kind of stuff. So lots and lots of things happen. It's a whole lecture of its own, really, on what happens to your soul when you die. But if you go on my YouTube channel, there are 2 lectures. One is a soul's journey through death, a bad soul, and one is a soul's journey through death, a good soul. 2 separate lectures. You can have a look at the details there. Okay.
So may I request we close up after thanking all our speakers and all our participants, making it interesting and interactive. And
can we have the next talk? Can we announce it now? It's Wednesday, 24th March.
Okay.
It will be a fun quiz. It will be a fun faith bingo. So we will be having a fun faith bingo on Wednesday, 24th March.
Okay.
And do join us for that. I will send a link around. Again, there will be prizes, certificates. It's going to be lots and lots of fun. Same time, 7:30.
Okay.
Try and come to that, please. Everybody will have lots and lots of fun together, and it will be this time with numbers. Okay.
Good.
All right, that was very nice. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all again.